He's one of the most famous faces on Earth, a superstar actor larger than life, known to millions by his first name alone, Arnold.
He's one of the most iconic characters, both on screen and off screen, in the history of movies.
And the great thing about him is that he's full of himself, and I mean that in the best sense of the word. But he's also humble.
He's terrific. He really can do it all.
Growing up in a small Austrian village, bodybuilding was Arnold Schwarzenegger's ticket to a better life and his dreams to America and the movies.
The goal was to get in the movies, to come to America, which was always for me the place to go. But the first thing was first. It was become the champion in bodybuilding.
But you wouldn't like it down there.
Let me be the judge of that. I am tired of the same old faces.
But Hollywood hated his name, his accent, and his oversized body. That didn't bother Arnold. He was determined to become a superstar.
It was like precognition. It was like being clairvoyant, because he is a superstar, you know?
His movies have earned over $2 billion. He's in a rarefied air in Hollywood, the ultimate action hero who has a gift for comedy.
Arnold's comic ability, it doesn't come from being funny. It comes from being straight. It comes from being Arnold.
His family, wife Maria Shriver and 4 children, and his need to give back keep his feet on the ground.
I think the only thing that's bigger than Arnold's arms is the size of his heart.
Arnold Alois Schwarzenegger was born in the early hours of July 30th, 1947, in the tiny village of Thal, Austria. His father, Gustav, was the local police chief. His mother, Aurelia, a devoted homemaker. Home was a rent-free 2-story house reserved by the state for police chiefs. Gustav Schwarzenegger was demanding and strict, and Arnold and his older brother Meinhard grew up knowing the meaning of hard work and self-discipline.
Well, he doesn't talk too much about it, but he told me personally that his father was rough, didn't treat him so good.
Gustav Schwarzenegger was an amateur ice curling champion. He encouraged his sons to compete in boxing, skiing, and soccer. At age 10, Arnold joined a soccer league and learned the value of regimented training.
I think there's no other place or no other activity that you can participate in that gives you more discipline than sports. Because in sports you learn about discipline, you learn about camaraderie, and you get the message that the harder you work, the more you can achieve.
Arnold was an enthusiastic student, but he also loved the escape offered at the local movie house. American film heroes like John Wayne and Kirk Douglas and newsreels of American life captivated him. He began to dream of a future far away from his Austrian home.
And I fantasized about coming to America. But the question really was, how do you come to America as an Austrian farm boy? I grew up in very poor circumstances, so there was no way that an Austrian could ever go to Hollywood and become really big.
Arnold's life changed the summer he turned 15 after a visit to a local gym in Graz. Arnold later wrote, "The weightlifters shone with sweat. They were powerful looking, Herculean, and there it was before me, my life, the answer I'd been seeking."
I remember that my first workout was so long that next day everything was aching, everything was sore. And I was so excited that what I trained worked because I could really feel my whole body.
Arnold became obsessed with bodybuilding. He soon realized it might be more than a way out of his small town. It might, in some crazy dream, be his ticket to the movies.
And one day, I saw a movie, a Hercules movie, and there was Reg Park, who won Mr. Universe 3 times. And I found out that, muscles and Mr. Universe title got him into movies and got him to star in this extraordinary Hercules movies.
Look out, Theseus!
Thank you, Hercules. You came just in time.
So, of course, that was, from that point on, my goal. Say, I have to become a world champion in bodybuilding. That's how I get into movies.
The 6-foot, 150-pound 15-year-old rapidly began to transform his body.
Boom, boom, boom. I was like exploding, kind of. It was going from 150 pounds to 250 pounds within 4 or 5 years. So, of course, some of them said, man, you're taking this too far. I'm really worried about it. This couldn't be healthy. And others were really admiring it.
As he began to win junior bodybuilding contests, his self-esteem grew as well.
Here's a young guy, 17, 18, 19, winning titles, people applauding him. So that made him feel that he was special. And that's what gave him all the confidence to go ahead in life.
After a compulsory one-year stint in the Austrian army, Arnold moved to Munich in 1966. In short order, he won the Best Built Man in Europe and Mr. Europe. He met and trained with his idol, Reg Park, and learned Park's training regimen. Then, in the 1967 Mr. Universe contest, the self-proclaimed Austrian Oak blew everybody off the stage. At just 20 years of age, Arnold Schwarzenegger became the youngest Mr. Universe in history. Joe Weider, who was building a fortune with men's muscle magazines and health products, sent Arnold a telegram inviting him to compete in the American version of the Mr. Universe competition in Miami. Weider also sent him airfare, Arnold's literal ticket to America.
I remember I came over here with no money, with just a gym bag. And I was received with open arms. I saw for the first time the generosity of the American people.
In Miami, Arnold was in for a shock. He was the biggest, but not the best.
He was a well-built guy, but I knew he wouldn't win because he was too bulky. In Europe, they trained for size instead of for definition and proportion and beauty.
After Arnold lost the competition, he vowed it would never happen again. He accepted Joe Weider's offer to help him move to Venice, California, take a small salary from his magazine to write a fitness column, and train at the epicenter of American bodybuilding, Gold's Gym.
I met Arnold at the old Gold's Gym. I knew right away this guy's going to the top because he had a focus. You know usually when somebody's going to the top.
At Gold's Gym, Arnold's intensity became legendary. He invented new exercises to develop and define individual muscle groups. He worked out with good friend and roommate Franco Columbu, a powerlifter he met in Germany. He studied ballet to hone a posing performance that was second to none.
That's the idea.
He knew all the great poses, you know, he knew how to smile, and he built his body into, you know, a great muscular symmetry that was just perfected by hours upon hours of work.
Arnold was loving all America had to offer. His outrageous physique drew lots of attention, and he dated frequently. He enrolled in college business courses and used his growing fame to launch a fitness-oriented mail-order business.
The key thing for me was to educate myself and to understand and learn everything about America and how America operates, the whole economic system, the way that democracy works over here, all of those things I wanted to learn.
In 1969, just after Arnold turned 22 years old, Joe Weider was asked to recommend a bodybuilder who could act for an upcoming movie called Hercules in New York. Weider told the producer about his protege, Schwarzenegger.
He asked me, well, could he act? I said, are you kidding? The guy was a Shakespearean actor in Vienna. And he believed me. And that's how he got the role.
Zeus has only to speak now for Hercules to obey.
But before its release, the producers decided Arnold's thick accent and thicker last name had to go. Arnold made his film debut with a dubbed voice, billed as Arnold Strong.
It doesn't even look like me. Look.
What are you doing? Oh, wow.
The hard part for any actor, anybody performing on film, is to learn how to use their gifts properly in a film performance. The thing is that Arnold Schwarzenegger started as an athlete, not as an actor. He never trained himself as an actor. And I think that first movie, Hercules in New York, you know, he was coming at it as an athlete.
This dubious beginning was not the calling card Arnold had hoped for.
When I ask agents or producers or studio executives if I could go and try out for a movie, they all laughed because they said, hey, you're 10 years too late. The 60s are gone. He says, this is the 70s now. And now the guys, the stars are Dustin Hoffman, Warren Beatty. He says, this guy's a skinny guy. Still not Mr. Universes. You know, now it's like the anti-hero kind of a look. Forget it. Why don't you go back in the health food business and maybe run a gymnasium or something like that?
It would be 7 long years before his next big acting break. And when it came, Arnold would be ready. By the early 1970s, with a Hollywood career looking like a long shot, Austrian transplant Arnold Schwarzenegger maintained his focus on bodybuilding. He soon began to dominate his sport. But his success was tempered by the loss of his brother Meinhard from a fatal car accident in 1971, and his father Gustav from a stroke a year later. Arnold's single-mindedness often destroyed his competition, even before their pose-offs. The documentary film Pumping Iron captured Arnold psyching out competitor Lou Ferrigno before the 1975 Mr. Olympia contest in South Africa.
If you retired this year, you just never had the Olympia, but you had twice the universe with the help. That's not too bad either.
Pumping Iron showcased Arnold's natural screen presence. His movie star qualities were undeniable.
I think Arnold always had a great presence. I mean, you look at Pumping Iron. I mean, that's a fabulous movie, and he just knocks everybody out.
There's one thing that there is no doubt about at all, which is Arnold Schwarzenegger is interesting. He's interesting to watch on screen.
One and only Arnold Schwarzenegger.
Arnold felt he had taken his bodybuilding as far as he could. After winning a record 7th Mr. Olympia title, he retired.
I only stopped competing, but I'm not stopping bodybuilding. It's the greatest sport. Thank you.
Bodybuilding had been good to Schwarzenegger. With Joe Weider's encouragement, Arnold had invested his contest winnings and mail-order business profits into real estate. Less than 8 years after coming to America, nearly penniless, Arnold had made his first million, or two.
I've always thought of Arnold as one of the smartest men I've met, you know, in or out of the movie business.
Financially secure, Arnold now began to apply lessons he learned from bodybuilding toward his acting career.
I asked myself, what did I do to become the world champion in bodybuilding? Well, it was 5-6 hours of training a day. Then I had to ask myself the question, am I doing that right now? No. So therefore I had to jump in and do exactly the same thing. So I took voice lessons, acting lessons, accent removal lessons.
In 1975, director Bob Rafelson cast Arnold as, what else, a bodybuilder in the offbeat comedy Stay Hungry, which starred Jeff Bridges and Sally Field. Rafelson sent Schwarzenegger to coach Eric Morris for a 12-week crash course in acting.
He was very articulate and picked up things like that. Arnold is very perceptive, you know. I saw that immediately.
Arnold's reward? A surprising win for Best Newcomer at the 1977 Golden Globe Awards. While Hollywood was learning how best to use Schwarzenegger's unique appeal, Arnold became a favorite at celebrity events. One of them changed his life. In 1977, Arnold attended the Robert F. Kennedy tennis tournament, hosted by members of the Kennedy clan, including 21-year-old Maria Shriver.
I ran into her and I met her. I think it was Tom Brokaw that actually introduced us. And we went dancing on the dance floor, and then we ate together, and it was like, you know, like this. And then she took me up to Hannesport the next day after the tennis tournaments, and it was like love at first sight.
Maria, a broadcaster on the rise, was President John F. Kennedy's niece. She grew up surrounded by political power and privilege. Her father, Sergeant Shriver, was the original head of the Peace Corps, and her mother, Eunice, sister to both JFK and Robert Kennedy, had founded the Special Olympics in the 1960s.
She had everything that I always dreamt of, that I wanted in a woman. She was gorgeous, beautiful woman with long dark hair, which I always liked. She had an outstanding personality. She was very smart, you know, and she's just an extraordinary woman.
They could not have been more different. Arnold was a Republican, Maria from Democratic royalty. But their ideologies didn't matter.
The Schreiber family and Arnold, you know, it's like, that doesn't fit, does it, you know? But I think they have a lot of fun with it.
In May of 1979, Arnold received a degree in economics and business from the University of Wisconsin. That year, he was also offered his biggest part to date, the lead in the sword and sorcery epic Conan the Barbarian, for producer Dino De Laurentiis and director John Milius.
Dino De Laurentiis became kind of like a father figure for me, as much as Joe Weider was for me in bodybuilding. I remember the first few days of filming Conan the Barbarian, he came to me and he says, "Hey, Schwarzenegger, you're Conan." You know, he was so proud that he picked the right guy.
The role was a perfect fit.
When you look back on it, his talent was raw in Conan, but his talent is who he is.
Released in 1981, Conan the Barbarian grossed over $100 million and earned Schwarzenegger a devoted following.
That camera either loves you or it doesn't, and you can't predict. But maybe the fact his idiosyncrasies were just enough to make you relate to him as more the common guy, and yet a super version of the common guy.
Arnold Schwarzenegger had become the action movie star he had dreamed of. But as usual, he had even bigger ambitions. By the early 1980s, Arnold Schwarzenegger had parlayed unprecedented success as a bodybuilder into a new career in the movies. His hard work had paid off. Conan the Barbarian had made him a star. Audiences fell in love with the very things casting agents said would not work in Hollywood: Arnold's supersized body and thick accent.
When you think about the top movie stars in the world, they're not straight cookie-cutter model types that you'd see in magazines, you know, modeling, you know, men's clothing. They're all sort of unusual in some way. They're all interesting.
In September of 1983, Arnold invited steady girlfriend Maria Shriver to an occasion he had long awaited. He became a citizen of the United States.
He says, "I wouldn't live any other place in the world. My God, this is the greatest country in the world. You can do anything you want." He says, "I'm going to take advantage of everything."
After filming a sequel to Conan the Barbarian, Arnold went on a hunt for a new character, a new movie persona. He soon found it in a film that would change the course of his career. It was called The Terminator.
When I was approached about Terminator 1, I remember that the first thing that I was approached for was to play the hero.
The Terminator was a low-budget film by an unknown but talented director, James Cameron. Schwarzenegger said if he took the hero role of Reese, the guerrilla fighter from the future, Cameron had to be sure to cast the perfect cyborg as his opponent, someone who was cold, lethal, and machine-like.
After I was through with this whole spiel, and this took like a half an hour of hyping, you know, Jim Cameron, of how this person has to prepare himself in order to be really true to this character the way he wrote it, he said, "You are the Terminator. You should play the Terminator." I said, no, wait a minute. The guy only has 24 lines. Don't do this to me. I said, do with the Reese character, because I just somehow clicked. It clicked, and I just fell in love with that character, and I could visualize how he should act and walk and talk and do all those things. And that's exactly what I felt like the first day when I shot the first scene. I felt like I was the Terminator.
Despite its low $6 million budget, The Terminator broke ground in the use of robotic effects. It meant Arnold had to endure hours in the makeup chair to make filmgoers believe he was living flesh on the outside, robot skeleton on the inside.
When Arnold has to sit through a 3 or 4 hour makeup, you never hear a whimper, you never hear a complaint. Nobody works harder, nobody cares more. He is there to do the work.
The futuristic thriller was cited by Time magazine as one of the year's 10 best films. It catapulted Arnold to superstardom.
And it's the magic art about casting. Why are some actors right for certain roles? And sometimes it just can't be explained. It just is. And I think it was that way with Arnold.
The following year, in 1985, Arnold finally popped the question to his longtime girlfriend, Maria Shriver. His mother, Aurelia, was thrilled, as were some 500 guests at their lavish Hyannisport wedding. The couple honeymooned in Antigua, after which Arnold flew to Mexico to resume work on his new project, Predator. Arnold's jungle face-off with a hideous alien being was another box office bonanza. Schwarzenegger, however, was hungry to try something new.
I think he had this idea that he had to find some other way to communicate on films beyond just being the toughest guy in town.
Arnold had always been willing to make fun of himself and his image. Now, he wanted to test his acting chops in light comedy. And he met the perfect director to make that a reality, while on a ski trip in Colorado.
It was right after I did the movie Ghostbusters, and he sort of comes up to me in the lobby of some club and he says, "You're that Ghostbusters guy, right?" I said, "Yeah, hi, I'm Ivan Reitman." And he said, "You know, I could be a Ghostbuster." I just sort of looked at him and wondered what he actually meant by that. And what he was trying to tell me is, look, I'm actually a pretty funny guy and I think I can do comedy.
A few weeks later, director Reitman ran into Danny DeVito. And before you knew it, there was a bidding war for this comic tale of two mismatched test tube siblings.
Excuse me, but I was just taking a shower.
Good singing. Oh, I baked you some cookies.
Cookies?
I guess it was a dumb idea.
No, not at all. I'm really looking forward to tossing them.
It's a very funny, light, silly comedy, but it's also got a real tenderness, and he was so sweet, and yeah, you really saw that tenderness come out. I thought that was really terrific, because normally he's this big macho guy with all the amazing bod and stuff like that, and you really got a sense of his sweet side.
When Twins made $112 million in the U.S. alone, Arnold, who had shrewdly waived his upfront fee for a percentage, made a reported $19 million. Even more valuable was his new family-friendly image.
I think Twins was a big stepping stone for him because it made him much more accessible to women, to younger kids, and it showed him as a performer, not just as kind of the tough guy, muscle guy.
The Schwarzeneggers had been trying for a family of their own, and in 1989, they welcomed their first of 4 children.
I remember when our first child was born, when Catherine was born, Maria. She was so dedicated, you know, and she was like glued to this child, day and night. And I was looking at her all the time, and I said, I cannot believe of how selfless this woman is. So that was really the biggest surprise about her, is what a great mother she was.
The action hero was now the star of hit comedies. Based on his box office muscle, the show business paper Variety announced Arnold Schwarzenegger had become the most popular movie star in the world. By the late 1980s, 43-year-old Arnold Schwarzenegger was on a roll. The small-town boy had conquered bodybuilding, the movies, married into the Kennedy family, and created a chemistry with his fans that few movie stars could equal.
Arnold has 100% commitment in the belief in himself, and that just penetrates the screen and penetrates you when you speak to him. And it's thrilling to be around him.
He's a man who is a movie star, who is not ashamed of being a movie star, and who has sort of taken on that mantle with appreciation.
A lot of people think, you know, being a movie star is easy. You just, you know, you fly around in private jets and limousines and get wined and dined. But the bottom line is you get to be a movie star by incredibly hard work and discipline.
With box office clout came the power to get projects made. Arnold's next film, Total Recall, was one such project. Ronald Shusett, the co-writer-producer of the smash Alien, had tried for 9 years to bring Total Recall to the screen. It seemed doomed, sunk in the bankruptcy of a company owned by Arnold's old friend, Dino De Laurentiis.
So Arnold called me. He said, "Ronnie, you ready to make Total Recall?" I was just totally stunned. I said, "Well, Arnold, yeah, I'm ready to make it, but you know, it's part of Dino's bankruptcy now. It's tied up in Dino's bankruptcy." He said, "I know, I untied it."
With a couple of phone calls, dealmaker Arnold freed up the rights to the long-delayed movie.
He just effortlessly got it made, as well as getting Paul Verhoeven to direct it, so I had both. I didn't lift a finger. So Arnold did the whole thing for me, just like he does in the movies. It was like totally awesome.
Based on a story by science fiction legend Philip K. Dick, whose other works inspired Blade Runner and Minority Report, Total Recall finds Arnold the victim of a virtual vacation to Mars gone awry.
Catch!
Get ready for a surprise!
The structure he loved. He said, don't change the structure. But he said, you got to remember, I am a personality. If you start giving me complicated dialogue that I can't pronounce correctly, I don't want the audience to say, here comes that big Austrian. So with a self-evaluation of himself is perfect. Most people's egos get out of control. They want to do Hamlet, whatever,
Laurie!
Co-starring a then unknown Sharon Stone, Total Recall used over-the-top violence, clever plot twists, and Arnold's one-liners to conjure up $260 million in worldwide ticket sales.
After all, we're married.
Consider that a divorce.
We were talking about this, and he said, I got to be careful because I kill people ruthlessly, but there are always people that deserve it. But he said, I've got to remain a good guy, but still, I've got to be the gentle giant, and that's what people want to see.
Schwarzenegger followed up with the 1990 hit comedy Kindergarten Cop, another collaboration with Ivan Reitman. Co-starring Penelope Ann Miller, the film showed Arnold as that gentle giant who loves kids.
So suddenly a movie like Kindergarten Cop, where he's surrounded by a classroom full of 5-year-olds, became a great opportunity for comedy, where he uses some of the energy of being a father and the kind of experiences that he had in his real life, and then sort of just cocked a little bit in a humorous way.
You really sense that Arnold is always having fun no matter what he is doing. And there's something incredibly appealing about it. You really have a feeling he loves his life. I mean, he loves his wife, he loves his children.
He's a good dad. I mean, what I know, it's not like I live with him, but what I see, we go to Sun Valley, he's always with the kids, he's, very protective.
There's a natural progression with Arnold, and he's someone who has always been giving back to the public and especially to kids.
Arnold had long supported his mother-in-law Eunice Shriver's Special Olympics for the mentally handicapped. He became their national weightlifting coach. The Kennedy clan quickly saw the depth of character their son-in-law possessed.
Some people will do things just for how it makes them look or possibly for their image, and he's not like that at all. He really puts a lot of time and a lot of effort into helping people and his different causes, and it's just who he is.
Even future presidents took note. Arnold stumped for George Bush in 1988, in his inimitable way, of course.
We don't have to talk about the Democratic candidates, right? No. They all look like a bunch of girly men, huh?
After he was elected, President Bush returned the favor. Schwarzenegger was named chairman of the President's Council on Physical Fitness. He traveled to all 50 states at his own expense, preaching the gospel of the great American workout.
Are we ready for some exercises?
For all the bravado that man has, he's got a huge sense of bravado and a huge sense of confidence. And that same huge sense that you see is the same amount of compassion he has for people, for families, for children. It all comes from a very organic and honest place with Arnold.
Arnold also became the chairman of the Los Angeles Inter-City Games.
What makes me happy today is to be able to teach kids how to say hasta la vista, baby, to drugs, gangs, and violence. And to say yes to education, yes to sports, yes to hope, and yes to life.
I once said to Arnold, it's a full-time job just being you, because there's so many demands in his time, not just from the movies, but he's involved in so many charities and political causes.
By 1991, the time was right, if not overdue, for a sequel to The Terminator. At Arnold's insistence, he returned as a kinder and gentler cyborg in Terminator 2, Judgment Day.
The Terminator character is interesting to play because you can play him one time as a villain, then you can play him as the savior and as the good guy.
At the time of its release, it was the most expensive movie ever produced. With over $500 million in box office receipts, the returns were equally impressive, making Terminator 2: Judgment Day one of the 20 highest-grossing films of all time.
Arnold's a showman. He loves to entertain. He loves to amaze the world. His ego is so in check that he said, look, I've never seen myself as a superb actor, and I don't care to be one. I want to do just what I'm doing. I want to make great movies. I want audiences to love the movies, and I hope they'll like me in them.
Arnold's American Dream had become a Technicolor blockbuster. He had hit movies and lucrative real estate deals, including a $10 million development in Southern California and an Austrian restaurant in Santa Monica called Schatzi. He also had a high-profile joint venture with fellow action heroes Sylvester Stallone and Bruce Willis in the Planet Hollywood theme restaurants. With his popularity at an all-time high, the last thing Arnold expected was a major bump in the road. But in 1993, Schwarzenegger was paid an unprecedented $15 million to star in The Last Action Hero. The film was a huge disappointment to both audiences and critics. Arnold was mortal, after all.
He's a very confident guy. I think he sees life beyond just acting. At the same time, he's very competitive. He wants to do his best. He wants to win. And when you don't win, it hurts.
I don't care what heights you achieve in this. I don't care what heights you achieve. What is inevitable is that there's a slide backward. And if you put all your apples in that basket, if that's your life, and that slide happens, which it will, those are the people that wind up hurting themselves.
Box office flops were part of the game, but now Arnold had to prove he had staying power. By 1994, Arnold Schwarzenegger's films had grossed nearly $2 billion at the box office. But when The Last Action Hero failed to live up to expectations, it was the first time Arnold experienced what most actors take for granted, the highs and lows of the movie game.
I was surprised how much it hurt him. I thought he was inured to it. And to me, I like that. He said, I'm not used to it. He said, it's a bad feeling. He said, to make a movie that nobody likes. He said, money hits as you had. He said, I don't like that to happen.
Remarkably, Arnold took personal responsibility for the failure of the film and vowed to do better next time. In a business known for inflated egos and outrageous demands from its superstars, Arnold was a breath of fresh air.
It makes you embarrassed almost to say that you're an actor when you hear some of the things that people demand. They serve less purpose to the community than a garbage collector, and they take themselves seriously. So Arnold is on the good side of that bracket.
For his next project, Arnold brought back an old and trusted ally, his Terminator and T2 director, James Cameron. True Lies featured Arnold as a suave super spy whose wife, Jamie Lee Curtis, thinks he's a mild-mannered salesman. Blending comedy and incredible action sequences, True Lies was one of the biggest films of 1994. Arnold was back in the type of character he knew audiences liked best.
He knows his range, and if that's what makes him popular, why mess with it?
I think he knows what he can do well, and that's what's made him so famous and so good at what he does.
But Schwarzenegger was not afraid to gamble with how far he could push his ultra-masculine image. In Junior, his third comedy with director Ivan Reitman, Arnold starred as the world's first pregnant man. Audiences, unfortunately, were indifferent.
I actually think it's the best of the 3 Arnold Schwarzenegger movies that I directed. It actually tested the highest of the 3 movies, but it did the least in the box office. And it's because audiences, I guess, didn't want to see him play a pregnant guy. At the same time, he was very proud of it. We were disappointed, but we moved on.
In 1997, after appearing as comic villain Mr. Freeze in Batman and Robin, Arnold laughed it up with co-star George Clooney at Planet Hollywood.
George, you want to explain about how you got those muscles?
Yeah, those were all store-bought. I don't want to brag or anything.
But Arnold's next project was not so lighthearted. In 1997, at age 49, he underwent elective heart surgery to repair a defective valve. Arnold would make a complete recovery, and just 1 month after surgery, he felt well enough to promote Batman and Robin back home in Austria. He also had the honor of opening the Arnold Schwarzenegger Stadium in Graz. This home country tribute gave Arnold time to reflect and appreciate just how far he had come. 1998 became a year of tributes. Dozens of Schwarzenegger's colleagues and friends turned out to honor him at the American Cinematheque.
He has done more movies and less dialogue than possibly any actor besides Lassie.
The last few years have been a challenge for Schwarzenegger at the box office. End of Days, The Sixth Day, and Collateral Damage all brought in respectable grosses, but they did not reach the stratospheric heights Arnold had regularly achieved in the past.
Do you feel like you're going to still do more action films, or are you getting a little tired?
Well, you have to ask my wife. I do action all the time at home, so I mean, ask her.
I don't think he wants to continue repeating himself, though, because you can't do it any better or any bigger than he's done it.
There was one film that Arnold's millions of fans had been waiting for. In early 2002, he scored a huge payday, reportedly $30 million, to return as the Terminator in T3. Arnold, then age 54, upped his daily exercise regimen to get in shape. After all, robots weren't supposed to age.
It was very important to really prove that it is the same Terminator. So therefore, my body had to build up again to that size the way I was in the first Terminator and in the second Terminator, because again, Terminator arrives from the future to the present time totally naked. So, you know, I again went back to the gym, worked out for 2 hours, 2.5 hours every day to really show that I am in the same kind of shape as it was 20 years ago or 10 years ago.
In T3, Rise of the Machines, Kristanna Loken co-stars as the lethal new Terminator, the TX.
He was in such great physical health that, you know, he was always ready for the challenge, and he loves it. He thrives on that.
In the role that made him an icon, Arnold was back.
I love it.
In the summer of 2003, Arnold Schwarzenegger once again visited the character that rocketed him to fame and movie icon status 20 years ago. In the massive $170 million T3 Rise of the Machines, Arnold was back, eager to raise the bar and deliver an eye-popping, box office-busting sequel to a classic movie franchise.
TX, can you find a way to destroy her?
Unlikely. I'm an obsolete design. First of all, let me just say that it is such an honor to be involved with such a great franchise. That, of course, at the same time, there is a lot of pressure when you do a movie like Terminator 3, because there are enormous expectations.
Arnold is the Terminator, and he is back, and it still works. It's an amazing accomplishment. It's that unstoppable thing about him.
I'll drive.
In the film, Arnold battles the technologically superior TX Terminator. T3 delivers the cutting-edge effects Arnold's fans have come to expect.
Desire is irrelevant. I am a machine.
Arnold took T3 to the Cannes Film Festival. He's always realized that selling his films is an art unto itself. Few actors are better at it and enjoy it more. But Arnold seemed ready for other challenges as well. In 2002, he persuaded California voters to pass an initiative promising millions for after-school programs.
It is important for me, since I have gotten the opportunities here in this country to be successful, that I help other kids to be successful.
After conquering bodybuilding and the movies, Schwarzenegger's been hinting for a long time that politics would be his next challenge. Arnold didn't wait very long. He is now the governor of California and at the helm of the 5th largest economy in the world. It turns out a dire situation in the state of California created the perfect opportunity for him. California was facing a $38 billion budget deficit and an electorate dissatisfied with their Democratic governor, Gray Davis. For the man with an indomitable will to succeed and a master plan, there was finally an outlet.
This is really embarrassing. I just forgot the name of our state governor's name. But I know that you will help me recall him.
Californians were so unhappy, so eager for change, that they were willing to consider recalling their recently re-elected governor, something that had occurred only once before in American history. 135 names were on the ballot, a colorful roster of would-be politicians, including a part-time actress and self-promoting starlet named Angeline.
My motto is, I love California. And if you love California, you'll vote for Angeline.
Arnold entered the race at the last possible second.
Hello, I'm before the papers.
Okay.
For the recall election on October 7th.
Okay.
And you know who I am, right? Yes. We're here to clean house. I will go to Sacramento and I will clean house. I will represent everybody. What we have to concentrate on is leadership. In everything I ever did, I showed great leadership.
Arnold's campaign was noticeably short on specifics, but his wife Maria fixed that. Already a veteran of countless family campaigns herself, she insisted on adjusting his message, less on the celebrity and more on the issues. Throughout it all, Arnold continued to receive the kind of media attention the other candidates could only dream of. And then, 5 days before the election, a bombshell. The Los Angeles Times began publishing a series of investigative stories about Arnold's behavior towards women over the years, and it quoted a number of women who said they had been groped by him in one way or another. Very few would come forward.
I was a newlywed to bodybuilder Robbie Robinson, and he was training in Gold's Gym in Venice, California on Pacific Avenue. I was just there watching him work out. The gym was rather full, and Arnold passed me by, and he groped my breast. It completely caught me off guard. I was just shocked.
Arnold's extramarital conduct had been widely discussed in Hollywood for years. His history of questionable behavior toward women could have stopped his candidacy cold. But the woman who knows him best would not let that happen.
The question is, if the allegations in the LA Times are true, he has humiliated women. He's put
well,
women
you know
in-
what? I don't see it that way. I see that, you know, all the women that work for him admire him. I have met thousands and thousands of women who have come up to me and said they have worked with him, they have worked for him, alongside it, and he has been an extraordinary gentleman.
Arnold would apologize, sort of.
If I did behave inappropriately, you know, I want to just say that I'm sorry and I apologize for that, because that was not the intention. It was like, you know, what was once considered playful behavior on a movie set now is considered something else. So, you know, I didn't want to offend anyone or really, you know, do anything that is any harm to anybody.
As everybody knows by now, it was a total recall for Arnold Schwarzenegger.
The clear message about Schwarzenegger's sex life is that Californians, and maybe all Americans, don't care very much about the sex lives of their politicians anymore. It was shocking in this case, at least to me, because the accusations were of a criminal nature. He was accused of sexual battery, which is different from consensual sex among adults.
Clean up this state. Yes, my brother.
It seemed more anger was directed at the Los Angeles Times for revealing the allegations than at the candidate himself. More than 1,000 readers canceled their subscriptions. Surprisingly, Arnold has remained unscathed. He has been filmed smoking marijuana and has bragged in an interview about participating in group sex. But it appears the Terminator has been dipped in Teflon.
Clearly it was his celebrity. Clearly it was a kind of straight-ahead macho sort of image. And clearly it was an act of faith and ignorance on the part of the people of California. Faith, because he didn't present anything of substance in his campaign, and ignorance because clearly the people in California weren't aware enough of the issues to understand how they might be addressed.
The real test is still to come, because the governor's office may not be the last stop for Arnold. Some say he has his eyes on the presidency, but there's a catch. Article 2 of the U.S. Constitution states in order to become president, you have to be born in this country. In July, Utah Senator Orrin Hatch introduced what could become the 28th Amendment. Admittedly, a long shot. It would allow anyone who has been a citizen for 20 years to run for the highest office in the land. And Arnold, as it turns out, has been a citizen for exactly that long.
Anyone who underestimates Arnold Schwarzenegger is going to get caught short. This is a man who is interested in power, and he's good at what he does, and he accomplishes his goals.
It is true that at the moment, Arnold is widely acknowledged to be the Republican Party's brightest star. But in California, stars have sometimes been known to fade rather quickly.
I mean, he's facing an impossible governing situation there. If he manages to clean up California, solve the budget deficit, revive the economy, preserve the environment, and ease traffic in Los Angeles, then maybe he should be president.